Welcome to the Kubus podcast. In each episode, we will be meeting the individuals who can give us real insight into the problems, solutions, and people in our technology industry.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Kubus podcast series. My name is Sophie Mitchell and I am the Cisco Vendor Manager here at Kubus, and I'll be your host for today. So we recently held a podcast around hybrid work, and off the back of it we received a lot of common questions from customers. So we thought, let's do things a little bit differently, turn things on their head, and let's invite Matt Slough back in. We know he's got a teething toddler at home, so we thought you'd welcome an hour away from the home office.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, we thought it'd be great to get you back in, address some of the questions, and we'll go from there. So just before we sort of delve into the questions, Matt, it'd be great to give us a little bit of a recap from our previous podcast. I know we sort of discussed some of the challenges that we're seeing around hybrid work. So if you could maybe just sort of touch on that. What is hybrid work? What are some of the challenges we're seeing? And obviously it was a while ago now that we recorded that, so just for our audience.
Yeah, things are slightly different, still quite the same with hybrid work. So the main trends of hybrid work are still there. It's around, we talked last time around workforce volatility, people being able to move their fluid labour between workplaces because we're all working behind desks in our houses or transitioning into working from offices. We've seen a lot in the news about companies mandating users going back to working in offices over the last couple of months. So that's been very interesting as well, because I think I mentioned last time it will be interesting where organisations mandate people go back to offices, whether that has an effect on the labour force of saying, well, no, actually, I've got this new way of working now that is remote, and I want to maintain that work-life balance. So that'll be interesting as well to see how that plays out moving forward, and especially with cost of living and things like that going on, where it costs people to commute to work. Why would they want to do that potentially now factoring into it? And then kind of the main key themes of hybrid work, as we talked about last time, security really at the heart of hybrid work. How do you secure your users regardless of where they're working? How do you most effectively enable them to execute on their business role? But then also, how do you encourage them to feel included and a part of the organisations that they work for, so that they don't feel ostracised, they don't feel isolated working from home, like they're not getting the access to the colleagues that they used to work with closely in their offices and environments. But then also, how do they grow professionally? How do they become a better employee, learn more, grow themselves? So yeah, those are all challenges of hybrid work, and it's about how an organisation kind of rises to meet those challenges that is going to answer whether those employees choose to work for another company or stay working for theirs. So yeah, it's still a very interesting world of hybrid work.
Great, thanks for that, Matt. It's good to get a recap, because I know it's a while since we recorded the original. So I've got a number of questions that have come in from customers. So I'm going to jump straight into question number one. So why should we look to invest in new technology to support a hybrid work model, particularly in the current economic climate?
Yeah, very astute question that, because I suppose, to frame that, where we are in a cost of living crisis for everyone, and I don't think there's anyone that hasn't been touched by that. But then also from a macroeconomic perspective, we're obviously looking at why would people want to invest in these sorts of technologies. I think the true answer to that is, and this might sound maybe a bit harsh, if people don't adopt a hybrid work model, at least as part of their thinking and their strategy moving forward, they will be left behind. As I've just mentioned, that fluid labour force, being able to move between businesses because I can achieve my role working from a desk at home, if a company is not offering that, that may well cut out some of the talent that they may well have been able to attract if they had a true hybrid work strategy. So we need to look at, as organisations, we need to look at how are we enabling those users. And yes, there may be some investment and cost associated to that, but the payoff in the best talent, innovation and things like that is gonna pay dividends in the end. The other side of it as well is just the transition of the market now, where we see more adoption of cloud and SaaS apps. We need to make sure that the access to those is secure. So I think regardless of whether people are working from home, their ability to access those apps from wherever they are, on the road, at home, in the office, has to be ubiquitous anyway. But then also, even if they are in the office, they need to be able to access them securely, and it starts to bring in some of the themes around zero trust that we touched on last time as well. So why should people invest in it at the moment? I think, yeah, the very straight answer is there is a need to invest in it regardless. The kind of more nuanced answer is there's some added benefit to organisations if they do start to adopt true hybrid work. I think we touched on last time as well, from a SASE perspective, making sure and being cognizant of not just taking the same architecture and pushing it into the cloud. Sure. So I mentioned last time SASE standing for same architecture somewhere else. So just making sure that you are re-architecting your network for what makes most sense to your business is and again, going back to I think what we touched on last time as well. Hybrid means different things for different organisations, different things for the teams within your organisation. So just having a very fluid approach to hybrid work is important as well. Don't be rigorous and structured in, okay, we are doing or we are not doing hybrid work, sure, and then what that hybrid work looks like today versus tomorrow versus 6 months' time, 3 years' time. It will be a change as the market changes.
And I guess companies that kind of embrace that are the ones that will succeed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the ones that foster, as we've mentioned, the ones that foster that innovation and that key talent that they want to retain, enabling them to, even when they are working from home, collaborate with people in the office or in remote areas, is going to be key for how that business grows. Okay, if they're stifling that innovation because someone's just doing their 9-to-5 job working from home as they would do if they were in an office, then they're not going to get the best from that talent. They're potentially paying more for that talent or for a workforce that isn't executing on innovation and growing the business and adapting and changing.
So question number 2, does hybrid work mean we need less office space?
Oh, yeah, that is a very good question, which...
It's actually also interesting that it kind of linked to the previous question, but in a time where we are in a cost of living crisis, Cisco are actually snapping up prime property or real estate, which kind of goes against, I guess, what a lot of people are doing in terms of downsizing. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, we spoke last time about Pen 1 in Midtown Manhattan as a smart space. But I get asked this question a lot, actually, which is quite interesting because my answer isn't what you would expect it to be, where you could say, well, yeah, you've got less people working in offices, so shut down offices and have less space. There's two parts to it. Number one, we've seen over the last few years, pre-COVID as well as now, an enormous growth in co-located offices where people are starting to say, well, I don't need a dedicated campus or I don't need a dedicated office. I can use Regus or WeWork and other organisations like that to say to my users, actually, you can go to any of these organisations, any of their sites, you can book a meeting room, meeting space, whatever, and you can do your work from that office. And that is a way of driving people out of their kind of working environment at home if they don't feel comfortable being able to delineate between their personal life and work life. You have a space they can go to, which is very easy, but also it's a structured cost that the business can look at and say, okay, I know exactly how much it's going to cost me because I know if I have 500 people working from co-located offices, I know how much that's going to cost. But the other side of can I decrease my office space that you might not be expecting is, it's entirely up to you as an organisation, as a business, as to what you're trying to drive from your workforce. As we've mentioned quite a lot, driving that collaboration and the innovation from your workforce can't be done necessarily in offices where you've got just banks of desks, everyone just kind of sitting and being one of a number. You need areas where they can interact with each other, and it's more of an ergonomic approach to an office. So that you may well think, actually, yes, I can decrease my office space. I can have a space that is purely dedicated to that kind of work because that's the kind of environment that I want to foster. But then there might be others where you go, well, no, actually, I still want an office in Reading. I still want an office in Manchester. I still want an office in London because the talent around those hubs is where I want to draw people in. And Cisco takes an approach that is a hybrid of a number of those. So we have our own buildings in business parks. We also have co-located offices like WeWorks and Regis, as I mentioned, so that people can work from those offices. We have historically had kind of, I suppose you could refer to it as siloed offices for our business units. So one business unit might not be able to access the office of another business unit. A real driver for Cisco, especially with the net zero by 2040 approach, is how do we enable it so that people can go into all of the offices and work cross-architecturally with other business units, and how do we find that value and really distill it down so that Cisco is getting that innovation from all of its workforce and all of its users. So that's a real piece as well that a number of our customers have looked at. We work with a very large marketing agency, over 200 business units that were entirely separate. They all had their different Active Directories and emails, and people in one building could go and work with another business unit, but they couldn't print stuff off. So simple stuff like that, and you just start to think, well, that's not conducive to a great working environment. If I want to print something off and I have to go back to my office to print it off and then come back to finish the meeting. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's the kind of, I suppose the scapegoat answer for me to answer that question is, it's really up to what the strategy of your business is as to whether you want to downsize, increase space as well. So it really is up to how you want to approach it. But just have a mind on, what am I doing with the space? Don't just have, if you are looking to invite and entice your users back to an office, don't just look at it and say, well, it's great if they've got power and connectivity, that's all they need. What are you doing with that space? Yeah, to make it more inviting for them. How do you prioritise their well-being, like we talked about with Pt.2, where you understand the humidity and air quality and light and temperature and things like that of a building. And then when it comes to that space, there are things that you can do when we've talked about the smart spaces piece, where you can then start to drive the efficiencies and the sustainability element of it as well.
Using that data to make business decisions.
So question number 3, we're considering an office refit this kind of just goes into what we just covered. We're considering an office refit to encourage employees back into the office. What Cisco technologies should we look to deploy to enhance this experience?
Yeah, there's a number of approaches on that, and I said last time I wouldn't do a big Cisco sell, but I will do that now, because you've got the traditional networking side that you would still need to implement in any office space. People still need the connectivity, still need to be able to access the internet and SaaS applications and resources within your corporate network and infrastructure. But then there's more data that, when we talked about Pt.2, there's more data that you can drive from a space, a workspace, and make that workspace a smart space. So, like I've just mentioned, understanding the air quality, humidity, temperature, light quality of an environment, and you can do that using Cisco technologies such as Cisco Meraki's IoT portfolio for the sensors. You can utilize the Wi-Fi and those sensors in the environment and layer over the top of that Cisco spaces to understand where people are moving around your environment and drive the data from that as well, and start to understand, how can I utilize the space even better than I already am? If people are congregating in one area and they never touch another area, is there something I can do to reorganize that area they never go to make sure that they're doing that? But then there's other things as well. How often do I need to clean toilets? So an example that we have is a train operator where they use our cameras and environmental sensors to understand when they need to clean toilets, rather than on every half an hour and someone just signs a piece of paper at the end. It's understanding the flow of people into that environment. And over time, they can then start to plot how many people visit the station on what particular days, what kind of journeys are they making, all that sort of thing. So they can then start to understand, okay, well, we really need more people in the station to help guide people around to do the cleaning and elements like that, versus, well, okay, we don't need anyone at this particular time of day because it's very rare that we have a real surge on those particular days. So
really smart, isn't it? And
yeah,
you can
exactly.
think so many use cases where that would be
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. When it comes to smart spaces, it really is anything you want to do with that space can be achieved, and part of it may need to be utilised using ecosystem partners and APIs and third-party applications. But that is absolutely what Cisco platform is built on. It is API driven. It's API from the ground up, and that data is transferable between platforms. So where it's built on Cisco, and then that data can be kind of shared with ecosystem partners and third-party applications as well.
And I guess it's fairly unique that you've got an end-to-end portfolio, which is quite, for a vendor to be able to do everything from the networking side to the security to collaboration. That's kind of unique and something that's, is great for customers in terms of management, IT teams. Yeah,
the real focus for Cisco is, we've seen over the last couple of years with the drive to digitization and how do all of these platforms work together. A platform isn't a platform unless it integrates and is interoperable with other technology. Okay, so from a Cisco perspective, being able to own an entire stack from Cisco that works together and you get that intelligence shared between the different platforms, and what we're talking about here is things like the connectivity, security and observability in a network stack. So how do I connect all of my users, how do I secure those users, and then how do I understand the information about what's flowing through my network. So Cisco as an example, you connect your users using Meraki or Catalyst, and SD-WAN through Meraki or through Viptela as an example. You then have the security element from things like Umbrella and Duo and AMP and products like that. But then you also have the observability piece through Thousand Eyes and App Dynamics to understand what the flow of traffic across my network, but then outside of my network to my ISPs and to those cloud and SaaS apps that all of us are using nowadays, Salesforce and Office 365 and things like that. How do I understand the flows of those traffic, and then how do I build my network to cater for those flows of traffic? Because there's no point in having terrible access to WebEx as an example for collaboration when I've got really good access to Salesforce. Well, I actually need real-time access to WebEx, and I can do that at the cost of other applications within my network that might not need that real-time access.
Sure. So on to question number 4, Matt. How can we make our offices smarter to help reduce our energy consumption and our carbon footprint?
Yeah, that's a huge hot topic in the industry at the moment, obviously with the cost of living, as well as the sustainability element. So a lot of businesses looking at driving down the cost of doing business at the same time as it's very important to a lot of customers out there, especially when they're working with Cisco and Kubus. How do we actually become more sustainable, and what's Cisco and Kubus's approach to sustainability as well? So, the technology element of it comes back, I think, to having a true hybrid work strategy. I've mentioned already that there's no point in having hybrid work if it doesn't work for you as an organization and doesn't drive the best from the talent that you have. But also key to a hybrid work strategy is that you're not costing yourself more as a business, where you're duplicating access into your network, and it's different for people in the office as it is for people outside of the office and outside of your physical network. And from a sustainability perspective, I've mentioned already about Cisco's net zero by 2040 goals, and scope 1 and scope 2 by 2025. But I mentioned on the last podcast that also extends to how our suppliers, how our supply chain all works to help us drive down our common net zero goals globally. Organizations will be looking at exactly the same. From a hybrid work perspective, if we want to get down to the real nuts and bolts of it, running your own hardware infrastructure in a data center is hugely more expensive and uses hugely more carbon than if you pushed it into someone else's data center, someone who might well be doing or might well have a net carbon approach already. So pushing that into a Cisco data center, your security, your firewalls into a Cisco data center may well work out sustainably to be better and environmentally better if you do do that than if you run your own data centers. Sure. There's also challenges around that. Our environmental sensors, we're working with a company who have 20 data centers, and they put our environmental sensors into those data centers because they worked out that they can save 70% of their carbon usage if they increase the temperature in those data centers. Obviously, HVAC is used to keep data centers at a constant temperature, but actually the devices in there can be a couple of degrees warmer, and that means that they're using less energy consumption in their HVAC when they increase the temperature in there than when they had it at that steady temperature. So they could absolutely save costs there. It's more sustainable. And then there's other things as well with those data centers which they do need around, like water leak detection and things like that is a real key part to making sure that there's no waste of products. Cisco also has a number of ways that we can help customers when it comes to things like buyback programs and that circular economy. What's happening to the kit that we're taking out of customers with your help as a partner? What are we doing with that kit that isn't just throwing it in a landfill? How do we repurpose that kit? How do we take the components out of it and remanufacture them into other products? But also, how do we enable customers to do that, right? How can we make it as seamless and frictionless for the customer to remove that kit, or for you to remove that kit from a customer's network and replace it with new kit that's more sustainably sourced? And then how do we take that away, repurpose it, remanufacture it, and then are able to sell it on? And how do we make that commercially viable for a customer to want to do that? Mm-hmm. So we have a number of vehicles that will help customers to do that, buyback programs with discounts built in, but then also, I think I mentioned last time as well, a number of commercial vehicles like enterprise agreements and things like that will help customers to adopt Cisco technology over time. But we're seeing a real drive towards software and away from hardware. Make it someone else's problem if it's software, which is great for customers. We all need to work more closely with the people that we do business with to understand how we all collectively can drive sustainability.
We're actually doing, as Kubus, it's a huge topic for us, and we're part of the buyback scheme. I think we've got our environmental certification, so we're doing what we can as a partner to...
it's huge. It's the millions and millions of devices that Cisco sells every year. You are a key partner in making sure that they're going to the right places, being used in the right way. It's not surplus to requirements. You're right-sizing customer networks before they're purchasing to make sure that we're not just sending out kit that's going to sit in warehouses and things like that, which we have seen in the past. Is customers approaching us many years after they bought the kit, we never rolled it out, can you do something with it? Actually, we can do something with it. We can take it back. We can give you the latest and greatest technology. We'll take that old kit back and we can repurpose it and use it for other things. So there's absolutely areas that we can all help.
Okay, so next question. Security is obviously a key topic. We had a few questions coming around that. So big question this, I think. So how do we ensure all our workers are secure when they're working remotely?
If I had a silver bullet for that, then I think I'd be a very rich man. Again, I don't want this to sound like I'm kind of a get out of jail free card, but it is entirely up to your strategy as a business as to what your security looks like. Now, Cisco, I know I've mentioned a couple of times, Cisco has the full suite, full end-to-end SASE and full end-to-end zero trust suite of products that can help to achieve that. But as I've mentioned a number of times, it is entirely up to the journey that each individual customer is on. Now, that starts with how a customer builds out their strategy and what their end goals are. Their end goals might be a full zero trust network, which, as I mentioned on the last podcast, is very difficult to transition from an existing network to a completely zero trust network. There are shades in between the kind of black and white of those. So understanding what your organization's strategy is and how you're going to get there is key. Something I mentioned last time is the freedom of choice that Cisco brings, is having that consultative conversation with us and with Kubus around how can you help us to achieve that. We've mentioned enterprise agreements and the commercial vehicles to help, but also how can you help us with services to build out how we go on that journey and get to the end goal together. The real challenge of security is it is ever changing, obviously, and what might not be a security vector one day can in 3 months, 6 months, a year's time become a security vector. The real strong points of SASE and of zero trust is areas such as, with true zero trust, verifying every single device, every single user, every time they interact with a network, not assuming that an actor is a safe actor, because they may well have malicious intent, and assuming that every user has malicious intent until they've authenticated. But then also allowing people the minimum amount of access and privilege in a network, so that if there is a breach of some variety, that it's contained within whatever that user can access and only what that user can access. That's the way, and through that segmentation, micro-segmentation, that's the only true way that you're going to ensure that the security of your network is strong. You can have strong firewalls, strong DNS security, everything the strongest you can find in the market. But if someone's able to breach it and then move laterally across your environment, then that's exactly, it's a zero-sum game. So being able to have that best-of-breed technology that Cisco brings through things like Umbrella and Duo and all the security of Talos and things like that, but then being able to make sure that your network is architected in a way where that segmentation is key, so users have access to what they need to, but starting to implement things like adaptive policy as well, so that you can understand there are nuances there, and people might need to access certain things that in the office that they wouldn't need to access at home. The example we've already given today is being able to access printers in one building and not in another, or on a particular floor. Segmentation isn't going to help when they need to do that. So being able to flexibly adapt policies based on location and who they are and what their job role is, the device they're using as well, what is the security posture of a corporate device versus a personal device, is an enormous part of zero trust and of SASE. So understanding that a corporate device has a stronger security posture potentially than a personal device when I'm accessing email on my mobile phone or on an iPad or such, and applications that are secured from end to end as well. So yeah, security is an enormous topic that I'm sure we could talk for hours about today, but the very simple answer is it is entirely up to what your strategy is. Consult with us, consult with you guys, and we can help with building out that strategy and that architecture and what that looks like, how we get you to the end goal, and what that journey in between looks like. Yeah.
So another security question, kind of following on from what we were just talking about. So we're currently using VPN for our remote workers. Why should we also be looking at SASE?
Yeah, this is.
I imagine there's a lot of customers that probably were just using VPN, COVID hit.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah, that's like, let's not.
Is it no longer good enough?
Let's not get it wrong. When COVID hit, the day that COVID hit and everyone started working from home, VPN for many organizations was the way that we could enable people to work remotely. There was obviously the enormous proliferation of mobile devices, laptops and iPads and things like that. And they needed a way of accessing the corporate network. VPN is a legitimate way of doing that in as secure a way as possible at that time. But the transition to cloud, as we've seen that accelerate over the last couple of years, pre-COVID obviously, but then most notably post-COVID, and especially people needing to access cloud resources, Salesforce and Office 365 and things like that, as we've spoken about. Being able to do that from wherever they are directly, rather than having to backhaul to a data center, have that traffic checked out of the data center. Again, we talk about, from a SASE perspective, not having our own data centers and that perimeter security, and the point of SASE being how do we disperse that traditional perimeter security that organizations used to do. I've got one massive firewall and all of my corporate traffic goes through that, and I know it's secure and I know it's been inspected and I know everything's clean. That's great. But now I've got people working globally. I've got people working from beaches. I've got people working from, as a perfect example, on my team alone, I have people across Europe, and some work from the UK that aren't British nationals. Sometimes they go and work from where they're from, colleagues that are from Portugal, from Morocco, and I don't know when they're working from Portugal and from Morocco that they're working from Portugal and Morocco. That is their choice, and that is when they come on a WebEx with me. I see them exactly the same as if they were at home in the UK.
Beach.
Exactly, and there's a nice glow to them as well, which I'm very envious of. But yeah, the ability with SASE to secure those and not just use VPN to backhaul all of your traffic to a data center. Number one is a lot more secure when you're doing it in a secure SASE way. But then also we've talked about sustainability as well. I don't want my own data centers because I've got to maintain those data centers. I've got to pay for the energy consumption of those data centers. I can make it someone else's problem at the same time as bringing that best of breed security, bringing that best of breed observability as well, understanding the flows of traffic. And also, if I'm in Morocco and I'm accessing any resources and cloud apps, I have got to backhaul over VPN to the UK first to then go to maybe Amsterdam or somewhere else in Europe or maybe even the US, whereas there might be a closer point of presence that cloud provider has. Exactly. So there's efficiencies there. It's the security piece is a lot stronger when you're doing it that way, and you are accessing those resources securely using SASE and Zero Trust again.
In terms of the IT management as well, I guess there's got to be benefits.
Yeah, you've not got those enormous overheads of managing all of that yourself. There's obviously still overheads of managing that entire network and environment, but we've talked about already that having that unified platform that Cisco provides as an example, where things are interconnected and interoperable, where you're driving that data from one point to another to make it actionable intelligence somewhere else that it might not be in one place. So the example that we use for a Cisco Meraki level is where we're integrated into Umbrella security and where we're integrated into Thousand Eyes, you have that complete connectivity, security and observability stack that you are expecting from Cisco. And I can see it all in one single pane of glass. We're now also driving into SASE technologies where it's consumption based. So Cisco Plus Secure Connect enables users to access the power of Cisco's SASE technology, but being able to flex up that as and when model, right? Exactly that page grow model, and the understanding what the cost of that is going to be in the long term as my business grows is so important for organizations nowadays. It's not, I've got to buy a really big firewall and it's going to cost a lot, but hopefully in the future we're going to grow massively, so we'll buy it now and we're future proofing. And you don't need to future proof with things like Cisco Plus Secure Connect because you are already future proof from the minute you start using it as Cisco future proofs. So things like that, enabling customers to use that security.
So the final question that we've got for you today, Matt, why should we use Cisco when implementing our new hybrid work strategy? And I know you don't like to go on a huge Cisco pitch, but maybe give us three points that why should we be using Cisco?
I think a lot of it is what I've touched on already. So I apologise for kind of going over old ground, but the hybrid work strategy that Cisco has and that freedom of choice for a customer to be able to look at the portfolio and the platform available and say, actually, parts of this work for me, other parts maybe don't work, and I can leave those to the side, but I can really very bespoke say, I want these elements and this is how I know they all fit together. I just mentioned about having a unified platform where I can see it all in a single pane of glass. Cisco Meraki as one example within Cisco's portfolio, and I've talked about that interoperability, but Cisco Meraki having that single pane of glass for all of my security, all of my networking, all of my IoT, my security cameras, all of my observability as well, and device management in a single pane of glass is hugely powerful for customers that don't want to spend days, months, years upskilling themselves and their employees on how to use different tools, all of their IT staff on, okay, you need this dashboard to be able to monitor this, but then switch into this other one if you need to monitor something else. Having it all there for you is hugely powerful. But then having it so that it is providing value back to you as a business. How is it enabling your users to be the best they can? But then also you as a business, I need actionable intelligence from these platforms to understand exactly how to drive the strategy of my business, the strategy of my IT if I'm a CIO. How do I understand what I'm getting out of that is enormously important as well. How can I start, I've mentioned the examples of toilet toilet cleaning, which is an odd one. But how do I understand where people are moving around my environment? Health and safety, the employee well-being, all those sorts of things are hugely important to customers. Cisco has a platform that helps customers to change and adapt the way that they utilize our products and our technology to fit however they want to use it and what they want to drive as value from it. So I know I've banged on about Cisco a lot today, and that is what I'm paid to do, yes, but also it is the clear choice that customers have nowadays of how they consume the platforms that drive their business, and having the ability to very bespoke choose which products from Cisco, how they implement them, where that value to them comes from. It's hugely important with our customers.
So that brings us to the end of today's podcast. So thank you so much again for joining us. And who knows, we might ask you back for a third time.
Yes, yeah, please do.
Welcome anytime. Yeah. Thanks very much to our audience for listening today, and we look forward to welcoming you again very soon to the next edition of our podcast series. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you for joining us at the Kubus podcast. We hope you enjoyed the chat. Remember, there are more conversations in the series. Just search for Kubus wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe.